They're here tonight following the release of their latest album entitled Feral Roots. Give it up for the Rival Sons.
Hello. Good evening.
Hello, check. Why didn't I get a mic stand?
Hey.
Well,
there.
here's the thing. So I got these, I got whatever. I'm not really good at multitasking, so they put it on the stand so I don't drop it on the floor. First of all, thank you very much for taking the time. I know you guys did a show at the Wiltern.
Was anyone at the Wiltern last night?
I think they were all there. Yeah.
Looks a lot like the front row.
Yeah. I want to talk about the record, and then we'll see where this goes. And if I understand correctly, and I'm going to start with Jay and Scott here. If I understand correctly, this started somewhere in a shack in the middle of nowhere.
It was actually somewhere.
Okay. Well, maybe you can explain where it was and what you guys were doing there.
It, we had the idea. I have to preface it with, you brought up Black Sabbath, right?
Yeah,
so we had gone through so much touring, and going out with them, putting out the Hollow Bones record that preceded Feral Roots, and Scott and I had such a crazy schedule that we had just roughly talked about, just in passing. Yeah, I wonder what we're going to do next, and I don't know. I'm not going to get into it. Oh, yeah, me neither. So we hadn't really gotten into it, and I liked the idea because I moved out to Tennessee. He's really busy over in Huntington Beach, and I really liked the idea of both of us unplugging and going out to somewhere that was remote, with no Wi-Fi, and because we both got a lot of responsibilities, we family men and everything, and but yeah, we went down to Hohenwald, Tennessee.
A little German town, like really old. Nothing really there. Walmart came in and wiped everything out.
Yeah.
Before that, it was just.
But there is a Fox. There was a Fox Theater.
There's still a Fox Theater. Yeah.
Geographically, in relation to Nashville, where is Hohenwald?
Hohenwald is a couple hours south.
Yeah.
Like if you go due south, and you follow the Natchez Trace Parkway there.
Yeah.
On your way to Tupelo. Pulled off there, and a buddy of mine, Aubrey Preston, he owns this old property, and it's like an old reservoir with water on either side, and then so there's a causeway that goes out, and then down at the end of the causeway there's this little shack out there.
And it's private, so no one can come. So you can't really even see the bodies of water from the road. You come through this gate and down this causeway, and all of a sudden there's these two giant bodies of water and a dilapidated boathouse, and it's super private and super creepy. It looks like a place you would stash bodies.
So what we did,
and of course, what better place to write a rock and roll record?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I think that that was I wanted to put Scott and I take him out of his element and take me out of mine.
Yeah.
And just so that we could cross swords right there and start philosophizing about about how we were going to go about this. And we didn't even talk too much about it, just like, okay, well, if you're going to bring that gear, I've got a bunch of gear already in Tennessee.
Right.
And so what we did is we went out there and didn't make a schedule, didn't make a plan, went into town, brought some food, and just holed up there.
Yeah.
Cooked, made small talk about played records. We had a record player out there, so we played records. And
what records were you playing?
We had Fandango out there. Some ZZ Top.
I went through and I just brought out like an old Caliphone, or what was it, like a Caliphone or a Crosley. It's one of those portable, mono jobs.
Yeah.
And I think I only brought out probably like 20 or 30 records or something. And I was kind of looking of what, because I know what he likes. I know what makes him tick.
Yeah.
And I know it makes me tick. And so I just threw some stuff together, everything from, Nina Simone. And then we listened to live at Rock Plast, ZZ Top, a smoking record.
There's some John Lee Hooker.
John Lee Hooker,
Yeah.
and like, all of those things, all different types of music, because we weren't really sure where the inspiration was going to come from. And on that same note, I brought out, there's this really thick almanac of American folk songs, and it's like, it was put together, I think, by
Is that the Alan Lomax?
yeah, that's the one. And but then a lot of it was transcribed, like Peggy Seeger, helped out on that a lot. And it's just a deep well. And for me, I'm looking through, it's all the same chords and stuff, but it's kind of like looking through a keyhole back to the past, and looking in there and trying to get something for that. Just get some kind of a view.
Yeah.
It's really cool to pull from that for inspiration, sonically, texturally, and melodically. Everyone's pulled from classic rock, and mostly everyone's pulling from blues.
Sure.
All rock and roll is. So
Yeah.
this was something a little different. Just not to like lift something from, but just to hear it in the back of our head. To
Right.
kind of
Right.
soak it in. And,
Yeah. One of the things, and I think you've commented about this, is the need to separate from technology. That occasionally, or more than occasionally, the constant din of having to be in touch, being in touch, information overload, all of that can get in the way of the creative process.
Yeah, I'm definitely not the first. People talk about like AI. Certain people, what was it, Elon Musk and Stephen Hawking, said like, no, AI, it's really not going to be good. It's not good in the long term. In the short term fixes, what we're doing is one thing.
We all saw that movie, man.
Yeah.
Schwarzenegger, Terminator. We know what happens.
Yeah, we know what happens. Yeah. Can we move on now?
But I think that the thing that worries me the most is when you're so reliant on your information, and so you have the entire known universe at the end of your arm, with your smartphone and everything. And when I say the entire known universe, that sounds very expansive, but really, that's human knowledge in a nutshell, and that's at the end of your arm. And I worry, it's like, I don't want to sound too cautionary for you guys. I'll just talk about how I look at it. I think it's important not to look to your devices or look to that convenience of information gathering, because we all want to be smarter than we are. And we all love learning. We love to find out new things and to test our acumen with how smart we are and what we actually understand. So we're constantly trying to expand those things. But what I worry about, and what I found for myself, is you look at this thing so often, you actually start looking at it as if it's a mirror. And it becomes very, very dangerous, because you, in the same way that you would look at a mirror, you find your right and your left, and you understand how to work within those parameters that are in your device, from social media and everything. I understand that this is just a part of the way that we live now. I think that, there's no painting in the world, in history, that's ever been more beautiful and more captivating for anyone, greater than what a simple mirror does. A mirror will attract the attention of any animal that you put in front of it. A child that isn't even crawling yet, you put them in front of a mirror, and it lets their imagination and their comprehension go wild. And now, with what we have in the smartphone age, is people are looking at it and they're trying to find themselves. And there's something that is very alarming about that. And I can't say that I have an answer, but I know when I smell a rat. I know when something doesn't seem right about that. And so the reliance on these things, it doesn't mean that I'm a Luddite and that I don't want to further technology and our understanding. Of course, that's that's what's going on. I don't want to slow anything down. I'm worried about the child that's inside of the adult that's looking for themselves, and the child that's within the child that is becoming more and more reliant on these things.
Yeah. And you know, I'm not quite sure how long you spent down there in the shack, but how much material did you come out with? Because I know there was a process beyond just writing down there.
Yeah, I think we probably we brought a few things in too. There were things. I
So
think,
you had ideas going in.
a few.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a few ideas that we had both worked on our own and even passed back and forth a little bit. But when we went down there, I think it was more like right when we saw the place, like when I rolled into those gates, I just looked and went, I have a riff for this place. I have things that sound like a soundtrack to this place. And
Yeah.
I think Jay was the same way. Like, I have something that sounds like what this feels like to us. And it was more about not working on what we had and more like creating in that moment. So
Yeah.
I think what we came out with, to be honest, it was less than more of the record.
Uh-huh.
But we kind of lit our fuse, lit the fire really, really hard.
Right.
And kind of had a direction coming out of there. And to be honest, not to be a teaser or anything, we probably have a whole nother record in the wait.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And one of the things, and then you, I think, Scott, you came back out here. You live in Nashville,
Yeah.
and there was some of this back and forth.
Yeah, I would come out and sit with Scott too.
That happened. You know, it's one thing, and if I understand correctly, and I can get the guys to jump in on this too. If I understand correctly, this record was written differently in that you had spent the time ahead of time.
Yeah.
You know, to kind of have some stuff going into the studio. But it's a very fine line between kind of being prepared and demoing the crap out of stuff, excuse my language, and spending so much time on it that you start to hate it.
We're the band that famously has like said we don't do pre-production. Before I did this band, that's every band, for all of us, that's what you do. That's part of the phase because it costs a lot of money to be in the studio.
Right.
So you write, and then you pre-production, sessions that are like kind of like a studio, but you're not doing your final work.
Right.
So you work the hell out of the song in pre-production, and you kind of wring it dry as hard as you can until you feel like it's all the way there. Then you go to the studio, or in the main studio, and you wring it dry again. And I just found the process wrung dry.
Yeah.
I just, by the time, it's really hard to like keep the spark of the original song and the light in the eyes of the song, know. And with this band, we famously always said no pre-production. Songs like Jordan, where we cut it on the first take when they were supposed to be songs that we were showing the producer. Thanks.
Right.
And there's probably 10 more similar.
I think that it's almost become a competition of who can care less. Like
Never quite heard it described that way, but
no,
okay.
that's it. I'm good with that.
And by that he means by not being too precious.
Exactly.
We care about the music so much, but I guess it's really confident in the performance. And more than that, we're talking about somebody like Alan Lomax. These are one takes. This music is coming from someone's heart.
Yeah.
They're not reviewing it. It's just what's in there. Yeah. That's what you're hearing. And it's moving. It moves us. It like stirs us. That's what we like. And we thought rock and roll was that for one blink of an eye. It stopped being that. And with our producer Dave Cobb, we very much wanted to get back to that.
Yeah.
That it's not about nostalgia. It's a great idea.
That's what I was going to say. You
Go
can
ahead.
think the caring less. That's Dave's job.
Yeah.
He lets
Yeah,
them
right.
know when it's time.
Well, and that's a place that we can certainly go now. So you guys have known Dave Cobb since '08, I think, maybe even before then. And I know Dave Cobb. I've gotten to know him a little bit, and he's his career is remarkable.
They
But-
call him the Grammy Whisperer.
Yeah, well, to a certain degree, there's no question. Tell me how you met him. How'd you meet him?
I met Dave Cobb. We met Dave Cobb via another friend of ours that is up in L.A., and he recorded a band, and they were out at one of our shows that we were playing, and they approached us and said there were these like really hip kind of L.A. guys, and they had a pretty cool record going, and they had just made like a kind of a demo kind of record with Dave.
Yeah.
They approached me and Michael at the show and went, "We've got the perfect guy. We just did some demos with him. Nobody really knows who he is. He's worked with Shooter Jennings. He hasn't really done much else yet. He's new, but he's amazing, and he's right up your alley. You know, I'm like a freakish rock and roll historian and really into it. Miley's the same. You know, we're all like that, all of us. And so we went, okay, yeah, let's arrange a meeting. You know, so I contacted my buddies who knew him, and it was a phone call. And I got on the phone with Dave, and I liked the phone call a lot. And he was like, let's meet. Let's like have lunch. So I went up and met with him, and immediately we just started talking about rock and roll and really connecting on it. And he was at Sunset Sound at that point. We were having lunch across the street, and I saw his studio, and we went, let's make a record. This is a good fit. Let's make a record. It was real simple like that.
Yeah.
And I'll tell one small anecdote about it. When we actually went in to record the pre-production thing, I had all my songs. I'm a songwriter. I had everything laid out. I am ready. I'm not going to waste any time. Here's how every song sounds. They're demoed. They're ready. Here's the drums. Here's the melodies. We're ready. Here's the solos. It's ready. Dave heard all those, and he goes, yeah, man, those are all real good. It seems like you already recorded those. It's like, do our own thing. I'm like, that sounds terrible. What the hell am I going to do? This is my material. And he goes, hey, you seem like a really good guitar player. Let's just have at it. And that's literally what we did. I mean, I had stuff that I could still recall.
Sure.
But it was nothing that we had worked on, and that's how we made Before the Fire. We made it in the room. Like, do you like this, Dave? And he would go, yeah, that's hot. Okay, well, let's all go into that room now and start banging it out. And we just bang it out in the room, and within a few takes, there it is. We'd have it. And I was thinking, this is asinine. This is the most bullshit way to make a record until the end. And I went, this was the best way to make a record of my life.
Was it,
But that's
Tell Me Something? Tell Me Something, I think, was day one.
And well, that one I did that one I did have. But we tweaked
partly.
it.
Yeah,
We tweaked it. Songs like Memphis Sun, that was not worked on. That was worked on right in the room. In the moment.
Yeah.
All of
Press
it.
record.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's I'm fascinated to know from everybody here in terms of kind of the feedback loop. You know, when you go in and you're doing it, you know, in the way that Dave does these things, because I know he likes to keep the vibe in the studio kind of loose. You know, tell me about the sessions for this record, and you know, kind of what the discussions were, given that you guys had obviously given some thought to this material before you got there.
Well, with going back to what you had said about like the fine line with you know, overworking or pre-production, like all of those things. I think that while in the studio, this is one thing that hasn't changed on all of our recordings. It's just get in there, start writing, and do it all on the floor. With this record, we kept that going, and we did it that same way when it came down to the recording process. What was different is we front-loaded it with a lot of writing. Yeah, Scott and I trading back and forth with a lot of writing, and not on most of our songs, not writing it where it was down to the T, because it's really important to leave that ambiguity there, because the other guys are going to come in and they have to put their stamp and their identity. It has to be in there. You know, you can't spell everything out and leave no room for expression.
Well, we never got behind drums. We never, so rhythmically it was a little looser and more open for Michael. Jay played bass a lot when we wrote. He would play bass and I'd play guitar, and we would just demo it like that. So it was loose and still raw, but the form was pretty well. We got the forms pretty well nailed down, but when we handed it over, everybody interpreted it. And we weren't so attached that one of the other reasons we don't finish things is because we want the personalities, everyone to play on the record and feel like it's them.
Right. Can you guys, Dave, can you guys talk a little bit about when the material gets handed over? You know, what's that process like for you guys?
Well, on this record, I had heard 6 or 7 ideas, like little demos. But I would say for us, I mean, they're writing in constant communication. They knew what the vector, where it was going. But I'm hearing ideas for the first time. So it's for the band, for us, it's like the old way of doing it that we did the previous 6 records with Dave Cobb. Just like on the spot, your first gut instinct. And most of what you hear on the albums, all the albums, is first, second, third take.
Yeah.
It's the most visceral, primal reaction to a riff or a chord. You know?
Dave's thing is very much about the finding the simplest solution, isn't it?
Yeah, you know that game where you would you'd have a baseball bat and you put your forehead on the baseball bat. And
You spin around. Yeah.
Dave is like the great upsetter when it comes to that because he'll put you in a situation that is going to throw you out of your comfort zone altogether, and he'll say like, how do you do it? Go. You know, how do you do it with if I take this away, or if I take that away?
It's not always the simplest in that sense, then, because he
interesting.
will do that. He'll go, "Oh yeah, I think that chorus is a good verse. You guys need a chorus. That's not simple, man."
That's producer 101.
Yeah.
By the way, did you guys get into it with him about stuff like that? It's like when he tells you, like, yeah, that chorus is a good verse.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Hell
yeah.
yes, we do.
If when you when you feel like it's a good idea, and if you think he's wrong, well, yeah, of course, you defend your philosophy on it,
Right.
and then we could talk about it, and then in the end, if it's strong enough to us, he's going to go like, well, it's y'all's record.
You know, we have a different relationship than a lot of.
By the way, that's the producer's last resort.
Yeah.
That is the producer's last
You can
resort.
do whatever you want.
It's your record.
We have a different relationship with Dave because it has gone on so long.
Yes.
We have become close, and
Yeah.
we just made a lot of records together. We're the same age. It's like that. So he really does act as an extra member in the group. It's not just like he's behind the glass, telling us what to do,
Right.
or he's in.
Yeah.
He's in. He writes with us.
Uh-huh.
He plays with us. On this record, he played guitar. He's played keyboards on records. He's played percussion on a lot of records. He's in with us, you know. So we're looking at more like, in one sense, we trust him as a producer.
Sure.
At the same time, he's one of us.
He's a partner.
And we can tell him to like back off of it just as much as we could tell any of the other one. It was like, we like this part. We don't want you to like kill it, And
Right.
you go, oh, we can change his mind too.
Yeah.
Throughout the record, throughout the process of these different records, we've changed his mind as well.
Yeah, I mean, Dave, in my opinion, what's gotten Dave so far, and with his, he's just a good-natured person, but it's his musical memory is staggering.
Yeah.
And for him, there are Dave's instincts. Dave's instincts are great, but he'll want you to rely on. His instincts are great, but what he'll force you to do is rely on your instincts. And when you have instinct versus instinct, you have to figure out what the better idea is really quickly,
Right.
And you have to be able to explain it, And so then it becomes that sort of a dialogue where it's an argument. I don't mean heated argument. I mean argument in the classic sense, like convince me.
Yeah.
I think in a big way, making a record or any art, maybe writing a book, a film, anything, any kind of art, it's a lot about defeating yourself. I think there's something in it where you have to you have to kill your darlings. You have to let go of what's precious to make the better thing.
Mm-hmm.
You have to look at it from not that little precious tower you've been looking at it in where you just hold it and it's real special to you. You have to let it go and live and go, I've been looking at this wrong. That's terrible. And you have to look at it from another side and make it better.
Right.
Yeah, that's like that's the catharsis that you're hoping for. You know?
So it's one thing to talk about production and writing songs and whatever. You guys recorded this record in arguably two of the most iconic studios in the United States, maybe in the world.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
RCA Studio A,
That's amazing.
and then
right?
Muscle Shoals Sound.
It was exciting.
Crazy great. So the question becomes, and this is for everybody, how does environment and understanding the history of the environment within which you are working affect the creative process?
There are two sides to that, because there's the experience side and then there's the knowledge side.
Yeah.
So you're experiencing it, you go there, and you're a foreigner, and you get into the space, and you're just taking it on its own terms. So you get that, that's on one side. On the other side, when you put it in context, and then you know all of the history and everything. Well, that history, all of it begins to inform the context, the experiential context in that same time. And so those things interact. And when you're there, if there's one thing I can say about these guys, there's no B game. There's no B game, and well, what if we don't really deliver? Every fight is a fight to the death. Every record, every time we hit the stage, I can say that about everyone. And so we don't bring a B game, but I know that going into these, it's like hollowed ground. It really makes you want to earn your right to be there in the first place, your right to put your stamp on that timeline of people that have come here and done the same thing. And
How much did you guys? How much were you aware of the history of these places before you went in?
Extraordinarily.
Yeah.
oh yeah,
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
all really, like I said, historians on that account, and
Yeah.
really excited to work in RCA. And really, it's funny how the Muscle Shoals came up too. We were literally mid-session, and it was really nonchalant. Like Dave's on the board with Fame and Muscle Shoals, and he kind of just went, "Hey, do y'all want to just go over there for a couple days and do that?" We went, "Yes."
Oh yeah, we'll
That's
do that.
Cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we were super aware, and there's like still the original piano from that Paul Simon used, and guitars that he used, and pictures of where the rooms were, where Jagger standing in the vocal
Aretha
booth.
Franklin,
On
Wilson
and on.
Pickett. I mean, it goes.
It goes on and
On and
on.
on.
So yeah, and they have all the records underneath
Yeah.
on the walls. So you're
Yeah.
going, oh yeah, that was cut here. Oh yeah, this, and it's just really exciting. And for us, we, like Jay said, we're pretty focused and we're all pretty locked in. But I think there was an air in there that brought something different immediately out in us, and
Yeah.
it's not as it's not really trite or because it almost sounds a little corny, like, oh, you're gonna go in there and make Exile, like, come on, you know.
Yeah.
But there's a mood in there, and it's not quite to the point of possession, but it gets late at night there, and we had been playing all day, and something happened. Like we were gonna throw a song like "Stood by Me Out." It wasn't working, and it was just we were done. It's not working. I think Dave was throwing the talent, and we kind of had. I think Dave had said, let's like try to like put this in a minor key, and we went okay, and everybody kind of sat really quickly, and immediately it felt like the room affected that song, and that sound happened in the room, and we kind of just went, this sounds like this room. I don't know if you guys know the history of Muscle Shoals, and when you hear that song, I go, man, that sounds like stuff
Muscle
that's
Shoals.
been made there.
Yeah.
Or even like Feral Roots, the title track was cut there, and it just has an airiness and an openness to it that I think it was very much because of the room.
Yeah.
So we tracked, just so that all of you know, Feral Roots, we tracked Stood By Me, we tracked All Directions, we tracked Imperial Joy,
Yep.
and we also tracked, those were the four.
Yeah, that was it. Those
Yeah.
four.
That
That
was
doesn't sound
that.
like that many, but there's
Yeah.
only 10 songs on the record, and we
In
spent
2
the rest of the
days.
whole entire time at RCA making the other 6, and we did those 4 in really almost one day, because
Yeah.
the first day you're setting up and getting it together. And
Sure.
yeah, so almost,
Do you guys? I mean, if given your druthers, would you prefer to work quickly?
yeah,
To just grind through stuff
yeah.
and and get it in the moment.
If we had a choice, we'd
Yeah.
probably make 4 records in 1 month and call it a day.
A day.
Yeah,
Start
that would be the
Yeah.
way to do it. I mean, you get, there's nothing I love more than a good crisis. You put yourself in crisis mode.
That's a good quote. I like that.
You put yourself in crisis mode, and you find out what you're really made of, because it's real easy to sit around and talk about it. I love this kind of talking about it. But you can overshoot your own abilities, or you can get really high on your own ideals. But getting in there and doing it quickly and having to rely on instinct, it lets you prove to yourself what you're made of and what you're capable of.
How much do you guys get? Because the sound of the record is incredible. I mean, sonically, it just sounds great. How much do you guys get involved in the sonics, in the tweaking of the sound? Do you leave that to Dave, or is that something that you guys are all?
Dave heads that up. We all have our head in the game now.
Yeah.
I think for the drums, Michael is 100%. I
Right.
want this. I love this. I want this to be different. For our individual instruments, we're very much involved, and even for the overall sound, we're all very, very much involved.
Yeah.
That said, that is Dave's area.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll all make little notes and stuff, but the record sounds like that because of Dave.
Dave.
Yeah.
And that's the benefit of living in Dave's space at RCA, because you have 10 options and they all sound incredible. So you just have to choose which one makes the most sense.
Yeah.
You know? And he's usually the one that's going to go, nah,
Right.
let's go here. You know.
Yeah, and I have to ask you this, and I'd be interested in everybody's opinion on this. You know, given where we are in the world today with respect to music and the way people consume music, I suspect I know the answer to this question. I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you guys still look at the album, the full album, as a body of work?
Absolutely.
You know, that it is thematically connected in some way, and it stands as a moment in time, a snapshot in time of this band in that.
If
place.
it is a body of work, then yes. But then, you know, how many records have you bought where it isn't? And you look at it and you go like, wow, there were two great songs. This is not a collection. That they weren't trying to do that, you know? So, I mean, when it is a collection, it's apparent to you and you appreciate it. And I'm definitely an appreciator of that.
Yeah.
I think I heard your question is, are we looking at our records like that?
Yes.
Absolutely. We're
Yeah.
looking at our records like this. There's no, they're not records with singles on them.
Right.
They're records with songs that take you down and around and bring you back somewhere or leave you off somewhere.
Yeah. You know, because one of the things, and it's an interesting discussion to have with artists in particular, is an album necessary? Is it necessary anymore?
I don't know if I think it's necessary as much as I think it's desired. It's the way I listen to music.
Sure.
I don't think it's probably as necessary for the world of music the way people are consuming it these days.
Yeah.
I think the real trend is like it was even in the 50s where people put out 3 singles and then put out an album to back up the 3 singles and the rest of the songs on there, they might not matter. 5 of them might be covers. You know what I mean?
Right.
But we're doing records very different, more in the way that they made them in the late 60s and the mid 70s, where it was the album, the birth of the album, where you want to put it on and do headphones, close your eyes, and probably back then smoke a joint and go drift away.
Nobody smokes joints anymore, right?
Yeah. You
Here's the good news: legal in the state of California, so it's all good.
raise your hand if you're not high tonight. Yeah, that's what I thought.
With so, you know, asking whether if it's relevant or if it's needed now, I think it goes back to you have to, as an artist, it's imperative that you do as you're compelled.
Sure.
You have to. So if it's within you to make a statement, if you need to make that sort of a statement, you can't worry about whether it's relevant or not. You know, like they say, what's that quote? Like, good art doesn't match with your couch. And you can't worry. You can't worry how it's going.
It's what's here.
Yeah, you have to
really say
satisfy
that?
what's within. Yeah. That's what they say.
Whoever they are.
What the hell are they talking about, man?
Whoever they are. So, talking, spending a lot of time talking about writing songs, about creating songs, about working in the studio. I know you guys just played the Will Turn. Half the people here were there. How much is live performance in your head as you're writing and recording? Is the idea of playing these songs in front of people paramount? Is it something you get to later? How do you think
mean
about
like
that?
you write a song like specifically to play it live?
Well, just thinking about it's one thing to write songs and make them great in the studio. It's another thing entirely to bring them on stage. And I'm wondering how much of the live performance is in your mind as you're making the record.
At this point in the game, especially, it's hand in hand.
Yeah.
It is.
We are making these records to perform them for people.
Yeah.
And we know they're going to take on a new life even though we're putting them down like this, we're just kind of going, this is going to be Mark 1. This song will become something else down the road.
Right.
All of our songs have, and I'm so thinking about it as a guitar player with what I'm sonically doing and how I'm going to negotiate with things or tunings. And Dave doesn't like that. Dave Cobb doesn't like that because that's not his world. He's like, you're making a record, we'll figure it out live.
Right.
And quite often I'm doing something that is impossible to pull off live in there. And then he's going, oh, man, don't worry about that. You'll be able to figure it out. And then
Not so much.
1 week after the record's done, here I am in front of 4 amps and 3 guitars going, if I plug this into that, I'm pretty sure I can make it work.
Yeah. But by the way, so you've had a chance, the record's out, you've been out performing these songs. Do the songs change?
The songs absolutely change. We talk about it. They change because they live two very, very separate lives.
Yeah.
When we get in there and at that creative flashpoint, when we have the arrangement together and we get in there and we record it, we even know then this is where it is right now. And then as soon as we hit the road, we know night after night this song is really going to grow into what it should be, what it's actually supposed to be, because you trust that that's going to happen when you're in the studio, because going back to how much do you foreshadow or when you're in the studio writing songs to play live. I think that we spend so much time on the road, and we spend so many nights out of the year on stage performing together that it's really synonymous with your creative ideas, with there's really no partition to that. It's like a constant stream of consciousness in that way. And the way that they end up growing into their own on stage with all of the improvisation and everything.
Yeah.
There's a lot of songs that we know we're going to take, that we have a feeling in our hearts like, our audience will like this. Something will happen. We know, like in this breakdown, something will happen. But my favorite thing is when the unlikelies, where the audience tells us, we're not telling them. They indicate what's happening, and we go, oh, we're doing this.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to open this up so you can do this with us, because we really want the show to be a very symbiotic experience for people. It's really, we're giving, but just as much as we're giving, they're giving. So we're kind of in this relationship, and you stop feeling like so much rock star feeling and being so much in charge of what's happening, and you more start feeling like we're all doing something together here. And this is
a
our
community.
Part. This is what we're doing. And I know that sounds super precious and nice, but it's actually very true.
Dave, you're going to?
Oh, I was just going to comment on as far as how the songs evolve over time. What's interesting to me is that a lot of the times, at least for me, I don't realize that they've done that until I go back and listen to the record again.
And you don't realize how
the
songs have changed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's how we used to do it.
Yeah.
How you've grown, sort of.
Yeah.
So I want to go back a little bit, and I want to get everybody in on this. Earliest musical memories. Tell me the first artist or band you remember hearing, whether it was on the radio or somebody's record or whatever, growing up.
That's just my mom singing to me. Period. Like that. There are so many great records that have affected me. So many great records. So many incredible artists. I don't think any of them have informed my musical perspective the way that my mom's voice singing to me it has informed ever.
Here.
Nothing.
Here.
Well, I think that when you're a baby and when you're real young, your mom is everything. It's everything. It's your connection, and it's your window to the entire world and living. And the way that she would sing to me, her voice was the maximum of honesty and of just true nature. And I know that it taught me to value that truth in a voice. Without her voice, I wouldn't be as discerning and I wouldn't push myself as hard as I do to tell my truth and to tell the absolute truth. And there's a lot of great records that in between now and then.
Yeah.
But that is what kicked everything off.
Right. What about you guys?
You should have gone last.
I know. What am I going to say after that? What do we got?
Oh, thanks, Jay.
Remember that time I heard a whole lot of
you
love? Sorry. It's
any answer you give, you're dissing your mother.
This category's closed. This category's closed.
So much for that.
Yeah, thanks, Jay.
Here's a different version of the question. Tell me the band or artist that you heard when you were young that you said, "Yep, that's what I want to do."
I got one of those. My uncle, I have some uncles that were really, really rock and roll maniacs. And they were pretty young when I was really young. And I don't know, I want to say like 7 years old. And my uncles were partying. And my uncle that showed me a lot of my first guitar riffs played a little bit. He called me over. He goes, "Hey, I want to show you something." And I'm like, "Okay." And he took me over to his place, and he had Song Remains the Same on the TV. And it was like the day where he would like pseudo hook it up to too many speakers in the living room. You know, people would do these setups.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a nice audio setup. It was like 13 mismatched speakers. And it was far too loud. It was the day where they made like 1,000-watt Marantz amps. And he's got it going through there, and he's playing me The Song Remains the Same, like Page's solo section, you know, with the bow and stuff, this whole thing where he's climbing the mountain. And he got me right in front of the TV, like he was planning to brainwash me. And he turned it up way too loud for my little 7-year-old ears. It was like painful, but I had tunnel vision. And I remember walking away feeling like I was on a psychedelic trip. Now that I could recall it as an adult, that was almost like taking acid or something. And I think it worked. I was brainwashed.
Yeah.
And I think from that point on, I just felt like I love that. Whatever I just heard and I saw, I want to do that.
Yeah.
I want to. It's like seeing a magician, literally. Like, that magic, I'm captivated. I have to learn the trick. I want to know how that went down. And it was.
Like, why would anyone ever do anything with their life other than that?
What a great idea.
Exactly. What about you guys?
So I come from a musical family, not necessarily musicians. My dad's a guitar player, but my sister, who's here, was very much into music, and we were. There's always a sound. There's always music playing in our house, and from Cream to Paul McCartney and Wings and the Beatles and Steely Dan and Toto and all that stuff. But there's one instance where my dad sat me and my sister down and played Pink Floyd The Wall, and I was probably 4 years old. It had just come out, and my dad is air guitaring Dave Gilmour's just brilliant playing on it, and he's like in the peak of this guitar solo, my dad's crying like from music, right? And so I'm seeing that music can evoke tears and emotions, right? And that's stuck with me. And the second one where I wanted to play drums, Phil Collins, In the Air Tonight. When I heard that, I was maybe 7 years old, and I was like,
There it is.
I was like, that's what I want to do. So that's my basic.
Mine's a little strange. My earliest memory is being a really little kid, and I don't remember what was on the record player, but I must have been like 2 or 3, and I told my mom that I wanted to be a female opera singer. So that's my earliest, you know. And it's funny because even now at this age, I'm 22 now, that I can still picture myself wanting to do that when I was that little kid. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense. Anyway. And then if I want to do why I became a bass player, that's because of a song called Spirits in the Material World.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I heard that bass line, and I just liked how that influenced that song.
Done.
And it made me want to be that guy.
So my uncle was a clarinet player, and he used to come over to my house and everything, show me all these riffs. And I was playing clarinet at the time, and he turned it around and played Flight of the Bumblebee, told me when to breathe, everything, and I'm like flipping out as a little kid. And so I went from there and then moved on to like piano and classical and everything. And he showed me Glenn Gould, who was a wonderful Canadian, like
Crazy.
brilliant guy who plays
Great.
Bach.
Yeah.
Then I saw Van Halen. Jump,
Oh yeah.
that song, and I was just
yeah.
like, I can do that too, and that was just over for me.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
And also Jay's mom's voice.
So, fair warning. We're going to ask for a couple questions in the house here in a minute. I had Duff McKagan here not too long ago.
Great guy. That was a great
with his producer Shooter Jennings, as a matter of fact, good friend of Dave's. And Duff was telling me that in any band he's ever been in, and particularly with GNR, that when they first got together, there was always a root band. There was always one band that everybody could agree on that, oh yeah, I like them. You know, whoever that might be. For GNR, I think it was Motorhead. That all the guys could agree, yeah, we dig that. Is there one band that you guys can all agree on that? Yep,
Miles Davis.
You know, I was going to say
definitely
every
one.
band I've
That's a good
ever
one.
been in, the one person I think that everybody will agree on is Bob Marley.
Oh yeah, everyone.
Can't
That's a
argue
good
with
one.
Our
Bob.
audience is going, what the
yeah.
Love Bob.
Well,
Yeah,
we've talked about the animals being really integral.
Yeah, the animals.
Animals,
yeah,
that's
the
a good
animals
one,
were a
too.
big one. I think with
that's a good one,
modern,
too.
with current music, we've got Unknown Mortal Orchestra is definitely like everything
Yeah.
they've done.
Yeah.
Is,
We're not trying to be
in the
too,
dressing room.
too cool, though. I mean, we surely were listening to, from the very beginning, it was like Yardbirds, Zeppelin,
Sure.
Animals. Like, this
Yeah.
stuff made sense. You know,
Yeah.
we wanted to put a spin on it. And I think that's where we were coming from before we even got with Jay. And when we got with Jay was coming from a little bit different place. That was the idea.
Yeah.
That's what I heard, that I'm like, that's perfect. Because the bands that I named, the guys that you meet that want to sing in groups like that, no offense to the legions of people doing it out there, they're pretty terrible. And they're trying to really just do that thing, you know? And it's a bummer when you hear somebody just trying to carbon copy something too much, and they just haven't found anything. They haven't found their truth yet.
Right.
So when I found Jay, it was different, and he was doing something much more folk-based, much more. It was from a different world, but it very much understood this rock and roll world. But these early rock and roll acts were definitely in all of our hearts. We knew what we were kind of aiming at.
Yeah. Well, you can certainly hear it. You can hear where it comes from. So we got time for one or two questions from the house. Yes, right here, first hand I saw.
How you doing?
I want to know how you guys balance the mystery of the band, because you have very private lives, right? With obviously the marketability with the band and trying to, further its name recognition out in the industry.
So it's
You guys are busting your ass touring, but I know that you also got to keep it, keep your own shit.
The answer to your question is very private.
Can't tell you.
But there is that balance of keeping what you want to keep to
On
yourself,
the other hand,
as well as the commerce.
yeah, I mean, everybody just does their thing pretty naturally. There's not a lot of smoke and mirrors going on with any of us. Like, we just live our lives pretty regularly.
Part of doing this is you have to be a little bit of a gypsy, like my grandmother was like that, I think it's just you're kind of born with it a little bit. So you have to want to constantly be going and seeing and traveling, and if you're not into it, it's not going to work. So it can get hard. It can be hard to balance stuff, but it's grass is always greener syndrome, right? It's like when you're on the road, you want to be home. When you're at home, you're like, oh, I kind of miss the road. So
Like a person unhappy anywhere is a person unhappy everywhere.
Who else? Yes.
Well, it's not more of a question but a statement. Is that I feel that you guys are kind of like a Steel Ray Vaughan. When Steel Ray Vaughan
Freaking A.
Bless you, dude.
You heard it here first.
Thank you.
You heard it here first. We got time for one more. Yes, in the back. Yep.
So talking about the extension of the cell phone of your arm, it being, for lack of better terms, a lot of noise being. The song "Shooting Stars" is that a answer to it? A point where the noise becomes too loud, and it's your version of the solution to it?
I think that is a great question. First, I think if I'm going to try to answer this as honestly as possible, I'm not exactly sure that it's an answer. Well, getting to it, anything that you try to create out of thin air, any time that you chain yourself to the desk and force yourself to create something that is as authentic as you can be, you are rebelling against the white noise. Anytime that you can go within and you can try your hardest to have an original feeling and an original thought that is purely your own, and that is a true essence of who you are and what you love most about being alive, the things that you love about what you see in the mirror, and the things that you love most about love. That is the rebellion against the white noise, really.
So, last question. So, Do Your Worst hit #1 on the Billboard Rock chart. And I'm wondering for you guys, what does an achievement like that mean to you? What does that kind of recognition or acceptance even mean to you?
Miley?
Yeah, that's you, Miley.
Awesome.
You know what? We were in Europe when we found out on tour, and there was kind of a little bit of a glee in the band that I hadn't seen before.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, it was the end of that European run in February, and so when we're 6 weeks in, we're missing our families. We're kind of we love playing, but at the end of a tour, it can get grueling, and so we got that on the Monday of the last week. Got that news, and it really helped us get through that final week of the tour.
I think it's weird to act like we want to be acknowledged so hard. Feels a little wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But let's be honest. When we make these records, we make the songs and the records for people to listen to. If we didn't want people to like them, we wouldn't need to share them. The idea is that we want everyone to love it. So for a song to go to #1 for us is an acknowledgement that they love that. Well, that's great, because that's what we want. We want them to love all of it, so it just feels good. Like, you get it. You hear it. We want you to love it. You do love it. Great.
Yeah, I don't. Me personally, I don't. I don't adhere to that thing like it's just so uncool to want to be loved. I think that you want recognition. You know, when I hear about getting a #1, the things that pop into my head is excellent. That's like we're going to have another chance to go make another record. Because that's what it really comes down to. 99% of the musicians in the entire world, no one ever gets on a stage. You know, they come home from the jobs that they hate with the spouse that they feel like they shouldn't be with, and they seek refuge in their instrument, you know. It isn't all that bleak.
In case.
I'm painting a dramatic, you know.
And you're doing a good job.
It gets better in the third act, believe me. But like when you look at that, and when you know that you have a #1, it ensures. It's like having firewood going into the winter. You know that it's going to allow you to make another record because we don't take for granted that we get to do this for a living, and things are on a razor's edge when it comes to a career like this. And when you get a good foothold somewhere, you can breathe for a minute, and you know that you're going to last through to the next record.
Yeah.
I want to add, I'm a sports guy, and no Major League Baseball player is out there not shooting for a World Series ring, a Super Bowl ring in football. On and on. So it was a nice little feather in the cap.
Yeah, it's great. Look, we are so pleased that you guys took the time. I mean, I know you just did a show, you've been out on tour, whatever, but coming down here, we so appreciate it. More importantly, yeah.
Thanks very much.
More importantly, we want to hear a little music, so give it up for Rival Sons.
Thank you.